Good day, familia. This is Rafael Collazo, and I welcome you to the COLLAZO Show here live on Substack. The COLLAZO Show provides analysis and commentary on the intersection of leadership, politics, and cultura. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Rafael Collazo. Please subscribe to the COLLAZO Show on my Substack page. That's the first place you're going to see it in video, and then it is subsequently released on our YouTube page. So you can also follow us on YouTube. And you can also listen now. We're excited to share. You can now subscribe if you just want to listen to me. You can now subscribe to the COLLAZO Show podcast. We podcast the show now, so anywhere you subscribe and listen to your podcast, you can subscribe now to the podcast, the COLLAZO Show podcast. So please subscribe as well as on our Substack, as well as on our all podcast platforms. So you can don't miss a minute of these conversations at the intersection, el punto, if you will, of leadership, politics, and cultura. We're going to touch on all those issues, all those topics today. Again, thank you so much for joining and supporting the COLLAZO Show and the COLLAZO Show podcast. I'm really excited that we're now on the audio side of things. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about the miracle that's taking place in Texas that people are not paying enough attention to. And we asked the question in the Cultura segment. There's actually some evidence to believe it's reporting that someone is dissing Bad Bunny in a major way in Puerto Rico. Can you imagine? Talk about not reading the room, but we'll talk about that later in the show. But first, I wanted to share with you all that for people that don't know me personally that well, that when you see this, it'll actually be the day after, but I'm recording it the day of. It's my mom's birthday today. And my mom would have been 78 today. And we lost her in the physical form. We lost her a little less than 2 years ago. It'll be in a month, it'll be 2 years. And, but we've never lost her. That's how I look at it. And it was important for me to record something in her honor today. And I struggled all day. I'm doing it actually when pretty much everyone in my house is in bed. Part of the reason is that it snowed 2 feet last night, literally, where I live in Jersey. So me and my sons and my wife, we've been all shoveling all day. It's been incredible. Hope everyone's safe and sound in the Northeast. I have to deal with that blizzard over the last few days. And, to be honest with you, on some level, my family and friends and our loved ones and people that were part of my mom's life kind of took a load off me because they did such a wonderful job all day on social media honoring her. And I want to shout out my brother Michael Collazo, my other brother Mario Collazo, and so many other people, my prima Laura in Puerto Rico, so many others that just shared, just some incredible reflections and the impact of her life. And, my brother Mike in particular got into, I wonder what mom would think about what's going on now, kind of this polar opposite, these extremes, especially Puerto Ricans are dealing with at this moment in our history where we have, on one end, the end of the world as we know it, with Trump and all this nonsense and the crumbling of our democracy in real time. On the other end, this is on some level, los boricos estamos en pica ahora con Benito, we Puerto Rican culture has been elevated on a level here. And it's pretty incredible, particularly after the Super Bowl. And, so all and everything in between, right? They did a wonderful job doing that, and I don't have to. And there'll be other times we have these conversations on some level every day on the COLLAZO Show. But what I wanted to do, because that was done, and I'm actually going to in the show notes, I'll share those links to particularly my brother Michael's homage today, which I thought was really special. What I want to do today is talk about, kind of what are the lessons from a leadership and political perspective that she left me that I wanted to impart with you all on the COLLAZO Show, part of our group here. So a few lessons from Mami. I think even beyond before we get into the political significance of it, the biggest thing my mom taught me was faith. And, there's the religious aspect of it, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second. But I think ultimately it would really, her biggest message to us was always, what's done is done in the past. And you don't know what the hell's going to happen in the future. And ultimately, you're not in charge of it. God is. So stop worrying about it and focus on what you can do today to help others and to live the life you want to live. And, what's so interesting and so life changing and so impactful about that message is that it's eerily reminiscent and similar to Bad Bunny's message currently. And if you going back to the conversation around the number one song in the world now, DTMF, which is the title track of his last album, which is the number one album in the world, I believe, or pretty much. And if you watch his concert footage, or you've been to one of his concerts on this tour, that's the message he gives when he plays that song at the end of his concert. So it's so fitting that Bad Bunny is continuing my mother's message in this new album and his seminal song. So, that trying, and I'm not very good at it, but the more we can live by my mom's credo around having faith that, what the future that will unfold for you, it may not be the future you think it's going to be. It may not be the future that you are necessarily working towards right now, but it's the future you're going to need at the right, and God will reveal what that means for you and the gifts that God's going to impart on you through that part of your journey at the appropriate time when you need it. And while I've never been great at kind of following my mom's advice, I wanted to impart on you all because it's very instructive to kind of thinking about how we handle this moment of our history and really beyond just how we live our lives. Because so many of us, whether it's the additional pressures of the economic pressures of our country the last 10 years or so, and just this society of keeping up with the Joneses and the art, the how would you say, the focus on the material things and the status things and the artificial appearance things in this world, in this society. At the end of the day, that's not really what it's about, and that's what makes us happy. It's getting that stress off us and realizing, really focusing on what's really important, which is your loved ones and your health and everything, and taking care of people best you can. Everything else kind of, are just things. So I wanted to share that with you all, and I think that's really instructive of our politics. And the other thing, which was a big, not only like a faith lesson, but really extended into my organizing career, I wanted to share with you all is my mom was about action. And, she, if anything, the conflicts, on some level, I think y'all have kind of gleaned this. My parents kind of built me to do this. And I want to shout out my dad, the original Rick Collazo. He's actually going to be on the show tomorrow. We were trying to schedule something the last couple of days to record. But we, the weather just threw everything off. It's blizzards. And, when there's 2 feet of snow outside your house, you got to deal with that. But for people that don't know, my dad is a salsa historian and was a radio announcer in Philly and a legendary, salsa voice. And anyway, a lot of history there. And there's really very few people I could have on the show any better to talk about his Willie Colon's legacy, the legendary salsero who passed yesterday. So definitely, we're all, mourning that loss, and that's a complicated history. And we'll try to do the best we can to kind of, really school you all and educate people about Willie Colon's legacy from a culture perspective. And there's a lot of errors of what he meant politically for us and culturally for us that we'll do the best to unpack. And we'll have that interview. I'm going to try to get it in tomorrow. And then this week, you're going to hear that interview. So I didn't want to short shift the Willie Colon conversation. But nevertheless, my mom and dad really taught, really kind of raised me to do this. And, one of the biggest things we would have conflict with is that, almost kind of like being my coach in doing this as an activist and now content creator, is that, she was like, you're a good talker, but don't let that be the only thing you do, because what you don't want to do is just be a talker and not be seen to take action on the things that you believe in. And, wow, very impactful. And again, I struggle with that. And my mom lived her life like that. My mother was a very fervent Catholic. and was seen as, particularly in the Latino Catholic community here in Philadelphia that I grew up in, as a leader. Every time we moved to a new neighborhood that was diversifying, she would found the Spanish mass with the emerging Latino parishioners. Very involved in a myriad of things with the Catholic Church in Philadelphia, and just a real perfect Catholic. My mom went to church all the time. Was really involved, and always tried to do the right thing. And she was very big on, her faith was centered on the actions that she took. Some very obvious, like stuff at church, and then stuff that I probably will never all know about. And one of the incredible things about my mom passing, the blessing she gave us, and she gives us like all the time still, even a few years later, is that, God, there's so much she did. She never even asked anyone to even know about, didn't ask for any credit for it, didn't tell anybody about it. But she impacted so many people, from a whole church ministry she did, I had no idea about, to just these little lessons and these little, moments that touch people's lives. And some of the calls I got after she passed, months after she passed, over a year after she passed, were from people that were like, I thought she knew in passing. But that, just these pivotal moments in their lives, that my mom was so supportive. And my cousin Laurita in Puerto Rico put recently that, it was just in key moments of her life, going to college and she needed a few bucks, or, some guidance or something. My mom was there for her. And, Laurita grew up in the Campo PR, over here in Philly. And, for my mom to be that pendiente about it, and not only just, care and pray about it, and but, to do those acts, to go out of her way. And, we don't have a small family, so this is one of many nephews, a couple dozen nephews and nieces she has. And there's so many of us that have those stories about her and her legacy. So, but that doesn't come just from praying or professing, even publicly, a love for God and a fealty to God. My mom wasn't showy about it, fam. She wasn't. And she wasn't trying to get you to go to church with all the time. She wasn't. She was in most of her life wasn't in the social media era, but she wasn't showy about it. What she did is she did the work, and she did what God taught us to do: just take care of everybody. And so I challenge you all, not just to, kind of, just in general, just try to do more, but really think about, okay, in my life, and this goes beyond politics, fam. Obviously, I want y'all to be more involved and raise your voices. We need them more than ever. But this really goes beyond politics. Is that, how do you impact everyone you come across every day of your life? I know that sounds like impossible, but I think that's really how we have to think about this. Because, on some level, the crises are easy. Que pasó en Puerto Rico in 2017, whatever, Maria, like these obvious things that's going on now, local, in our politics nationally. And, like on some level, that's kind of like an obvious moment to do something. And we should, and we're going to need to do a lot more. But, coño, man, I had people call me, a month after she passed, 2 months after she passed. Oh, this is, in these moments that probably didn't, these small moments in their lives that my mom was there for them, where she lent them some money, just got them a resource, gave them a ride, just went the extra mile to consult them, to give them a little consultation in their lives, keep in touch with them, send them a postcard. My mom, it was old school. We always sent people postcards, particularly our family in the island. And she took action to try to impact everyone that she came across. And if we all tried to do that, not just pray about it, not just talk about how much we love God and trust God, which is very important, but really try to live what God's about. Coño, he didn't make sure there was enough bread just for his homies or his mom. He made sure there's enough bread and fish for everybody, even people that were faulted, presumably sex workers, guys on the docks, the homies. Those are Jesus's people. So not to get too preachy about it, because my mom wasn't preachy. But we have to get beyond words, and we have to not only really think about how do we take action every day to touch people with our own gifts and our own blessings and uh, our own touch in a sense, because everyone has a different way of going about it and touches people in different ways, impacts people in different ways. How do you really try to do that for everybody and take action and being active in that? It's really special, and we have to take a lot more action, familia, because we're going to have time. We're going to take a lot of content to this, and we'll keep telling y'all the biggest challenge we have is, yes, I mean, obviously, what hangs over everything is the voting rights issue here. Um, and are we going to have elections in November? And the way these special elections are going, these primary elections are going, they are not going to end well with Republicans. So the only way they can prevent the political tsunami that's about to happen is probably steal it. That's what scares me. But beyond that, familia, in terms of just from a human perspective, we have to put our heart and soul and our energy, and we have to have a compromiso with each other, with God, with our loved ones, with our community, with Latinos, with everybody. We're going to do everything we can to stop the scale of these detention centers to take place. These are concentration camps, familia. People have died in them, but some people have died in them, but most keenly, there's thousands and tens of thousands of people already suffering in them. And if you haven't heard, Dilley Prison, which is going to, on some level, going to be a part of your life, and knowing what's happening in that particular facility outside of San Antonio, Texas, if it already isn't, it's going to be a part of your life, unfortunately, because the latest reporting, that's where they had little Liam in, fam, and they got dozens of little kids in that place suffering. And we've already heard about, I mean, women being, fam, it's being reported that they have a wing in the facility called the Blue Butterfly Wing. I don't know what the symbolism or what the blue butterfly it means, but basically, fam, what they're doing is when all these families come in this facility, they grab the young adult women and the teenage girls, and they put them in one separate wing, away from everybody else, and nobody can ever see them, including when the politicians go in there to inspect them, and they have no contact with everybody else. What do you think is happening there? Considering the people that are running this country, what they're about, you see some of the connections with the Epstein situation. What do you think is happening to those people? And I don't say it to be shocking. From the beginning of this, I've been putting a lot on social media to try to communicate specifically to Latino men about the dangers that this administration, regardless if you think you're good because you're a citizen or you have law enforcement in your background, or you support this administration, whatever reason you think you might be safe, the women and your daughters are not. There's too many examples to repeat. Hundreds, thousands of American citizens have been put in these places. So I don't say that to be dramatic. I say that because if we can't protect, there's nothing more important than protecting our families and, frankly, protecting ourselves from torture. I mean, state-sponsored torture, that's what it is. And they want to build more and more of these places. So we have to do everything we can to stop that. Mami, yo lo bendiga. Happy heavenly birthday, Mom. I miss you so much. And you know how much everybody love you and miss you. Know you're in a better place. Know you're with your parents and your brother and other loved ones. You're having a great time watching Ricky Martin shake his thing at the Super Bowl and all the other fun things that are happening. I know you're enjoying that. And, I just hope my biggest fear is that I let you and Dad down. And I'm not enough. It really is. And so I need to do better. I need to be better, take more action, and do better, trust in God, and do better, and just do better. And I commit to that team. I'm gonna try to do better because you deserve that, and we all deserve. This world deserves us to carry that legacy to do better. Let's talk about some politics, man. Talk about God and faith. What's happening in Texas is kind of a miracle. I mean, I don't know if you're seeing. I mean, it's the you know the election people are talking about, and Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico for the Senate Democratic primary federal familia. I mean, regardless of who wins, the bigger story, regardless of whoever wins this, and that election day is a week from the day you're going to see this, is that the early vote turnout is unbelievable. It's eye popping. You have an over 100. It's about, if I'm doing the math right, almost 150% increase in turnout of Democratic voters in the primary up to this point in the early vote cycle than there was in 2022, which is like the comparable, election, and over 100,000, over 100% turnout more from 2024. It was a presidential, was higher turnout. Most also notably, more Democratic voters have come to turn out the Republican, which, if you know Texas politics, I mean, Trump beat averaged over 1 million votes in Texas. So the fact that in the primary cycle, at least, Democratic voters have caught up, have eliminated, that what seemed like potentially an insurmountable lead in the fall. Now this Texas is in play for me. Texas in play for the Senate, the governor. Texas is in play. It's pretty incredible. So the question is, 2018, Beto O'Rourke, my college buddy, by the way, only lost to Ted Cruz in a Senate race by a couple 100,000, less than 100,000, 200,000 votes. Allred lost in 2024 to Ted Cruz by 900,000 votes. And the split was similar, if not a little worse, last in 2024 in Texas for statewide candidates. So the question is, can Democrats make up 1 million votes this cycle? Now, the early vote totals indicate that's a possibility. The other thing y'all need to consider is there's 6.5 million Latinos that are eligible to vote in Texas. And probably only like half of them are registered to vote. So if we could mobilize Latinos this cycle, if Democrats can mobilize Latinos this cycle, we can get the proper investment in mobilizing Latinos, show them they have a message, show them not only a vision, but that they're willing to be ride or dies for the Latino and actually fight for the things we need, which is that if we have to surround these Dilley and Fort Bliss with people for months and everyone's involved to close these places, we're going to do that. We're going to do everything we can within the legal legislative process to do that. We're going to we're going to do everything we can to save people's health care. And by the way, we've not only 2 million people have already lost health care at the beginning of the year because of Trump's policies and the big, beautiful bill last year. But Texas, historically, from a state perspective, has been amongst the worst for Latinos and children for have health care access. Incredible. Mostly those are like red states, like Georgia and Florida and stuff. The latest polls are saying, CNN's poll, Trump only has 22% of the Latino community still with him. I mean, if y'all don't, well, numbers and presidential history and stuff like I do, 22% support is really mind-boggling. I mean, that is the floor. That's really just lo primo que son, that just watch YouTube clips all day and don't believe anything anyone else says. Because God brought Trump down to them. That's all he's got left. Those real hardliners. And you know what? This is another example. I keep telling y'all, I know it's as frustrating as it is, and how satisfying it feels to troll them online and to talk shit about your cousin, behind his back. We just have to ignore these Trump Latinos because because all the other reasons I've said on the show is negative energy, not really going to help. They're not going to change their mind because anything you say anyway. But we don't need them. If 80% of the Latino community is with us, or is done with Trump, and is open to the Democratic message, then that's more than enough Latinos that we need to turn around this whole situation, flip the House, flip the Senate, win some governor's races, and flip some legislatures, strengthen some majorities of these legislatures, and get Texas cooking. Flip Texas blue. You flip Texas, you win that Senate race and that governor's race. You change the country, maybe get a chamber. You change the fundamental quality of life for the Latino community will change in November. Because a quarter of the Latino community lives in Texas. So, familia, we have a golden opportunity to make this happen. And Democrats did, but you know what? I'm gonna keep telling y'all, Democrats, don't just think because Trump's such an f up that automatically people gonna vote for you. Some of that's gonna happen, but you're not gonna get the margins and the potential wins you could get unless you show, yeah, there's investment. Of course, you've got to invest, and obviously, I'm gonna push that because I believe, my organization does some of that work. Pero familia, if you don't show Latinos you're really there, like you need to go and be there with these detention facilities. There should be 75 Joaquin Castros. Members of Congress will be standing in front of these places every day they can. They're not at work. And organizing and mobilizing people. And by the way, all of y'all need to be. From Obama on down, fam. I'm sorry. This is not the time to play it cool. Everybody need to be doing this. Needs to be getting out there visibly, showing people that the danger in this country is behind those walls and those detention facilities. The horrors are already taking place. They're only going to get scaled if we let them, because they have the money and the budget to do it. But they got to be out there, all the above, the affordability issues, the health care. I'm just a messenger on this one, fam. Take it for what it's worth. But the biggest thing Latinos tell me, and I don't ask. You know what they tell me? They got to get rid, to show me that they're real about this, they got to get rid of Schumer and Jeffries. I'm just being honest, fam. I kind of, I'll make my own feelings known about that at some point. And I'm not pushing that agenda, but I'm just telling Democrats that's what Latinos tell me day and night, all over the place, across the political spectrum. They're tired of what they believe is this corporate Democrat leadership that ain't strong enough and is compromised by corporate interests and Israel and whatever, or APAC and all the above. That's what I hear. And by the way, that's the other thing I want to mention. Axios reported today that the reason they didn't release the autopsy, the Democratic autopsy, was because of that piece that they determined that the reason they lost the election was the Gaza, Palestine, Israel situation. And 3 months ago on the COLLAZO show, that's why I told y'all that's why they didn't want to release it, because it would have exposed that issue and brought that issue to the forefront. And I never thought that the APAC would be such a dominant conversation in Democratic politics, but it is, fam. It is. So Democrats are going to have to deal with that, and they're going to have to there's going to be a reckoning, because what's going to keep happening is it's going to cost them primary elections. And so the Democratic Party's got some reckoning to do, and I think the voters are going to do it for them. But that's democracy. Real quickly on the Cash Patel situation, he's just an embarrassment. To go carouse around, to. I mean, he's just such a loser. Look, fam, I have friends that are elected officials that have had statewide positions, very prestigious statewide kind of positions, cabinet level positions in major American states, and people that are very members of Congress. I have a couple, acquaintances with members of Congress. I've had dinner with members of Congress and very prominent people. And, me and my network, no, not to put our friends like that in those kind of positions where they're even drinking in public like that. Maybe a glass of wine over at a nice restaurant, but you know what? We're not going to have so-and-so drinking like that where people can take pictures unless we're like in a private room in a restaurant, because we don't want those pictures. We don't want that perception that they're being unprofessional. What's more of a sensitive position in our government than the head of the FBI, where you got to be buttoned up and ethical and on top of it? We got all kind of stuff going on. Look what's happening in Mexico with the Savannah Guthrie's mom, and all these pedophiles that he ain't doing nothing about. There's all kind of things going on every day in our country you got to be dealing with. Somebody just tried to shoot up Mar-a-Lago yesterday, 2 days ago. My man is using our money to live out his male guy trip fantasies and crashing, hockey locker rooms to chuck a beer with him. He's just a total embarrassment. But that's what happens when you lower your standards, fam. We lowered our standards as a country, and this is what's happened. I've put on the before we get into the Bad Bunny conversation, I put in this in the crawl. People may have seen the footage of in Quakertown, PA, which is kind of deep Philly suburbs. There was a furniture company when I was a kid there. And that's all you heard about Quakertown. Quakertown. You used to go to Quakertown to get your furniture. I remember my dad rented the U-Haul to go get the big couch set when we bought the house. That was like, that's what Quakertown was for. I don't think it's there anymore. But anyway, I put in the crawl. So you may have seen over the weekend that like Thursday, Friday, there was a group of Black and Latino students that did a walkout, peaceful walkout of their school, like which is happening all over the country to push back against ICE. And as people saw from the footage, an older white guy who was in plain clothes, who apparently is the police chief or the sheriff, basically got into the protest and started pushing some young women around and got physical with a couple of very young women, high school, junior high school women, girls. These are children. And I put the phone numbers for the governor and the county DA because as of this recording, those children have not been released to their parents. And at worst, they, disorderly conduct at a protest. I mean, this is misdemeanor stuff at worst. And if you look at all the footage, it looks like he's escalating the situation. He's getting in their face. He's getting physical. And it was just a terrible scene. So please call the governor's office and the county DA. And first of all, these children need to be released. There needs to be a full investigation of the behavior. The what appears from everything I've seen online in the videos. I mean, just disgusting behavior by this member of law enforcement. And finally, Familia. Did someone cross? Is it possible? Does this even make any sense that someone in 2026 would cross Benito, Bad Bunny? So, journalist Rafael Lenin Lopez has reported that Puerto Rico Governor Jennifer Gonzalez Colon apparently has fumbled the bag. So, you saw, and we talked about it on the show last week, that Residente is going to direct and produce a movie called Puerto Rico, which is about the life of Puerto Rican revolutionary Jose Maldonado Roman, the White Eagle. And Bad Bunny's going to be the lead, and it's going to be an all-star cast. And this was going to generate, if it was going to be filmed on the island, 4,000 jobs and all the incredible benefits it would have made by filming this incredible epic movie, Caribbean Western movie that Residente has developed. And apparently they didn't cooperate. They didn't get them the permit, so they're going to have to take the production to the Dominican Republic. Why would you do that? How would you possibly not do everything you can to have that? Forget the significance of the movie, the economic opportunity to have that movie filmed on the island, all the publicity, all the benefits of having this movie filmed on the island of Puerto Rico. Mobilize the culture, the creative community, the film industry in Puerto Rico, which Jacobo Morales and other legends, Raul Julia and many other legends have tried to lead a fledgling movie industry that's been revived in this golden era of Puerto Rican arts and culture. And, so documentaries and wonderful projects have popped up. Much respect to our great friend who stays on top of the Puerto Rican film stuff, Marangeli Mejia Rabel, has the Latino Film Festival in Philadelphia. This would have been such a wonderful opportunity. Not official, I guess, but it's apparently, according to her reporting, this is not happening. So the question is, why would she do that? She's not a dumb person. Jennifer Gonzalez, former resident commissioner. So, it really speaks to these two visions and these two symbols of, I talk about in the U.S. context, there's kind of like Trump America and Bad Bunny America, In the same way, I would say like Jennifer Gonzalez, the governor of Puerto Rico, is sort of a symbol of where Puerto Rico has felt stuck for about 40 years. Just kind of like, I'm the governor of this island and I have some ability. I'm not dumb, but I got to deal with this guy, Trump. So I'm going to just, I'm co-opted in a lot of ways and I feel so I'm being constricted. So I'm going to do everything you can just to kind of go along, get along with him. In the meantime, She doesn't seem focused and doing nearly enough to hold Luma accountable, which was really going to be, regardless of Bad Bunny, going to be the what she was going to be viewed, judged on in her tenure, and why she won a primary against an incumbent who was the governor of Puerto Rico at the time, Pedro Pelosi. Um, and it's this go along get it long attitude, like a helping out corruption, because there's all these like and very kind of traditional, stereotypical Puerto Rican political thing over the last 40 years that both parties have been victim, both major parties have been victim of. You got there's all this like corruptive smoke around her in this administration. The Essentia project in the south part of the island, a lot of her family got laying down there that would benefit. The one person in the administration seemed to be doing something about holding Luma accountable. The Consumer Affairs Director, Valerie Rodriguez Irazo, she fires her because it seems like she was doing her job. And, and now she's hating on Benito. So the question is she dumb? Or is this about a personal grudge? Or is this about by allowing Puerto Rico, which is about a Puerto Rican revolutionary, starring and being directed by the two most prominent independentistas on the island, Bad Bunny and Residente. Is this about giving more oxygen to a vision of what Puerto Rico 2.0 could be? That isn't just beholden to a colonial master who stands up to this sort of Airbnb attack, if you will, and more Puerto Ricans having to leave the island and saying, no, we're not going to have that anymore. And really a vision of what Puerto Rico could be and what it could be for the Puerto Rican community, not only the island, but also in the diaspora, which is 2/3 of us. So is it a personal thing, or is it you're scared of the bigger message it would send by actually having a successful, showing Puerto Ricans we can execute with our talents and with our talents, we can execute producing, directing, developing, starring in a global successful movie that would be produced in Puerto Rico. Is that what it is? It's something. Like my great friend, well, I wish he was like my friend. I know I've met him. But the incredible Puerto Rican artist and medical doctor, PJ Cinzuela, always says, familia, no tenemos miedo. Which is my mom used to say. Don't be scared of the future. God's going to provide and going to give you the guidance that you need. We continue to please call Governor Shapiro's office of Pennsylvania, the Bucks County DA, get those children released. Let's get a full investigation. Those children didn't do anything wrong. That's all. They were it's really self-defense. That they certainly shouldn't be incarcerated for several days over it. We'll have more time to talk about this gentleman. It turns out, unfortunately, Ruben Ray Martinez was the first U.S. citizen killed by ICE last year. Video footage and evidence is now coming into surfacing a year later after his murder. That American citizen who was just trying to go on vacation on Padre Island, South Texas. You need some accountability and some justice. Thank you all so much for watching and listening to the COLLAZO Show and the COLLAZO Show podcast. Please subscribe to our Substack page, anywhere you can find us, on YouTube, and on audio. Please subscribe, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you can find us, and please give us a review so you don't miss a minute. And you can share my voice with other people who enjoy these conversations and analysis at the intersection of leadership, politics, and cultura. Thank you all so much, and have a blessed day.